Hello, everyone. Today we'll be focusing on the COVID-19 pandemic we are currently in the midst of experiencing. However, we are hoping to put a twist on things as we view it from the lens of obedience, resistance, and culture regarding individuals' responses. We'll be doing this by comparing different responses to the pandemic in various nations. Before we begin, we wanted to give a brief introduction of what COVID-19 is. The first COVID cases were identified in Wuhan, China during the month of December 2019. It is a highly contagious disease that spread across the globe despite the efforts of many global leaders. So far, it has caused 1.43 million deaths globally and 243,000 in the US alone. Quite simply, it is the worst pandemic of modern times. To begin, we would like to emphasize the fact how U.S. is an individualistic culture and how our response has varied on a statewide level as opposed to the national one. As everything was first beginning, there were a lot of unknowns. Our political leader, who is also our president, did not deem it effective to have a nationwide lockdown. Keeping this in mind, we decided to focus on what our state's early and current responses were and how they differ. On March 9, 2020, Governor Mike DeWine, Health Director Amy Acton, and Lieutenant Governor John Husted decided to declare a state of emergency after there were 3 positive cases within the state. Amy Acton was one of DeWine's cabinet members and led the state in our COVID-19 response. She continued to press that we needed to flatten the curve, and in order to do so, we were needing to wear masks, social distance, and stay at home as much as possible. DeWine's response came prior to the national one, and in the beginning, Ohio was being praised by how quickly we had responded to things. For instance, when more testing became available, Ohio was the first state to test an entire prison facility. We kept wanting to fight the virus in any way possible. In the same regard, companies were shut down, and coming from a capitalistic mindset, that was a huge shift. Initially, Ohio tried to force people to stay at home as much as possible. On the flip side, the responses to these were not all positive. People started to act out and stated that the government was infringing on their rights. Having to wear a mask and social distance started to feel like people were being oppressed and didn't believe that the government should have that much power over them. Further, as the U.S. does not traditionally wear masks, getting people to buy into their effectiveness took much longer. At the end of the day, Ohio's response was to trust science, especially in the beginning.
In Ohio, the virus is more widespread than it has ever been. While we are not in a full lockdown anymore, the number of infected, hospitalizations, and deaths is not any lower compared to the lockdown earlier in the year. As we move into winter, things are only expected to get worse. Governor DeWine has recently made several television appearances to strongly urge Ohioans to follow guidelines, as hospitalizations are almost at a tipping point. He has threatened that restaurants and gyms could close again if Ohioans cannot slow the spread of the virus in the coming weeks in the second half of November and headed into December. Currently, these shutdowns have not been ordered as of Thanksgiving. The following graphic shows that much of Ohio has experienced very high levels of spread, with several counties reaching the highest level of spread. Governor DeWine has been praised in the past for his quick and decisive response when the virus was first spread across the state, but currently a shutdown-weary population means that DeWine is hesitant about issuing new stay-at-home orders or other types of restrictions such as closing gyms and restaurants. The Ohio Department of Health has issued a limit of 10 people for public or private gatherings. It is important to note, however, that there are many exceptions to this rule, such as weddings, funerals, and activities protected by the First Amendment, such as religious gatherings. Just like with other parts of the country, there has been resistance to restrictions resulting in protests and rallies. Many protesters claim that they are primarily concerned with the economic impact to both businesses and individuals. They also express concern for schooling for children and perceived personal freedoms being violated.
We chose to add Pakistan to the list for comparison because it is a collectivist culture with the largest non-liberal democracy in the world. Pakistan currently has the 28th highest number of confirmed coronavirus cases in the world and the 29th highest mortality rate. Considering that it is the fifth largest country by population with a highly dense population, it seems to be doing better than many other countries during the COVID-19 pandemic. Pakistan implemented national lockdown in the early days of the pandemic, but it was lifted shortly afterwards. Prime Minister said that poverty was a bigger threat to the life of people and halting the economy was not an option for the country. Pakistan's population is highly congested and concentrated in cities, and people hardly followed any of the recommended social distancing protocols, but have surprisingly lower number of cases and mortality rate as compared to the USA. Culturally, Pakistan's population response to COVID-19 pandemic has been the same as the USA, but they still have a much lower rate of COVID-19 infections and deaths. Possible contributing factors to this difference may include environmental factors resulting in variably developed immune systems. Some studies have suggested that BCG vaccine, the vaccine against tuberculosis routinely administered in some South Asian countries, might be linked to lower risk of contracting COVID-19, and USA has never recommended administration of BCG in its population due to the rarity of TB in the USA.
Like Pakistan, China is considered a collectivist culture, with a large focus on family and fellow countrymen. However, China has a very strict and controlling government exclusively operated by the Communist Party of China. While the Chinese government has a long history of criticism from other nations, China seems to have controlled the spread of coronavirus very well. The virus originated in China and spread rapidly, having a deadly impact on the country in late 2019 and early 2020. But soon, things began to turn around. In fact, as of October 4th, 2020, China has confirmed over 90,000 cases and around 5,000 deaths, while the US has confirmed over 7 million cases and over 200,000 deaths. So why does China have such a low rate of infection? One reason is the strict rules and policies enforced by the Chinese government. They have blocked travel between provinces and cities, enforced the use of widespread contact tracing apps, and have rules mandating that people can leave their homes no more than twice a week and only for 3 hours at a time. Additionally, Chinese culture has long valued obedience to rules and respect for authority. Because of this, there seems to be very little resistance to COVID-19 rules and restrictions made by the government. Those that do resist are publicly shamed through social media or yelled at through drones patrolling the city streets. Due to this strict government control, China has also been able to very effectively monitor and contact trace its citizens. A government task force was created to monitor neighborhoods and apartment complexes. If someone wishes to leave their home, they must receive permission from their monitor, and if they are sick or cannot leave, the monitor will bring back food and supplies for them.
We have discussed that the Chinese government is able to exert a large degree of control over its population. Part of this is definitely through force, but also because of a high level of obedience to authority that seems to be in the mindset of the Chinese population concerning its government. The collectivist culture combines with higher levels of obedience to government authority and creates a situation in which a pandemic can be quickly controlled, albeit with harsh measures. In our class, we watched a movie called American Factory. The American workers were described as seeing the work as a means to a paycheck, while the workers in China see the work as both a means of supporting themselves and their society as a whole. To quote one of the Chinese managers in the movie, he says, "We are all in the same boat. Keeping the boat safe means keeping everybody safe." He was referring to the motivations of labor, but this sort of mindset can be applied to accepting certain restrictions to fight in a deadly virus.
All of this shows the people of China have a very high rate of obedience and a low level of resistance. There is an overall respect for those in authority and a strong sense of belief in working together towards a common goal. In conclusion, the values and culture of any given country or region seems to dictate the level of resistance and obedience to rules set forth by government authorities. This will then dictate what policies are used to control the spread of COVID-19 and that country's infection rate. Thanks for watching. We hope you learned a little bit more about culture and its impact on the spread of COVID-19.